All right, well, welcome this afternoon. I'm going to hopefully not drive the bounds of technology too far in doing a live presentation for you today. So if it breaks, then I'll be doing more talking than showing. But I felt the best way that I could really communicate what GIS is, or Geographic Information Systems, was to really show you some examples. So I just wanted to start today by just saying that when I was preparing for this, probably the thing that occurred to me the most was the two words social and impact. Social really applies to people, and people are intrinsically linked to place. We are all affected by where we are, where we live, where we work, what's around us. Those are all the things that impact on us. And similarly, if we are looking at projects, it's about people that we're trying to influence or trying to benefit in some way. And I guess that's the second part. Impact really implies some sort of positive change for people. So I see GIS being very significantly linked to what the outcome requirements of social impact. And so today I'm going to just start by, in 10 minutes, there's not a lot of time to go over this, but I will show just very quickly what some of the basis for GIS is. And then I'm going to go through just three quick case studies, the last one which is a video which will hopefully help describe and communicate what this is all about. So I'm going to take the assumption that you know very little or nothing about this by starting. The first thing I wanted to say was really about evidence. When we're trying to understand an issue or put a case together for maybe funding or for some sort of argument, evidence is really key. So the party or the side of any negotiation who has the best evidence usually is the one who comes out with the best outcome. And it usually exists in some sort of textual or tabular form, normally when we start gathering our data or our evidence. So basically, evidence is pretty key in us being able to understand what is happening and what sort of outcomes are being achieved, what sort of impact we're having. So when we apply GIS, one of the first things we do is we actually link our data or our evidence to a particular location or to place. So what we're doing is we're applying a geographical context to what it is that we have and we know. This is really the first step, and it might seem a little bit, in some ways, a bit bizarre or irrelevant, but studies have shown that there's about 80% of data contains some sort of location component. So location is actually in everything. It's very pervasive, and yet we're not necessarily very aware of it. It can be as simple as something like an address or a postcode. Something always happens somewhere to someone. So this simple step is significant because things are not always apparent in a tabular or table form or some sort of textual form. And we sometimes try and help this process a little bit by perhaps putting in some graphical presentation or something like that. But GIS is different in the sense that it can bring out patterns and relationships where things aren't necessarily linked in a hard sort of context, a hard relationship. But you can see patterns and relationships in data when you suddenly bring it into a geographical context that you couldn't otherwise see. The second step is really about linking other types of data together. So the first one obviously is putting it into a geographical context. The second one is actually bringing other types of data. And this is where I believe GIS is quite unique. It actually enables you to bring data which is seemingly not related or not connected in any sort of way, and link it together with other types of data, and suddenly you get a much more holistic picture of what's really going on. So that data could be economic, it could be social, it could be environmental. So things that may not have a direct relationship, suddenly you can actually look at in a complete system. So in my work, this simple fact enables us to talk to large organisations and governments and things, often where they have very stovepipe departments. And we might think of GIS as the context of a map as being the output, and in many cases it is. But in a lot of cases, in the sense of like a large organisation, it's not about a map, it's about being able to link the information in a context which is actually able to be used across a whole organisation. So very many specialist areas can suddenly get a whole picture when their individual systems don't talk to each other. And this is really about the concept of what we call geodesign. So it's about designing and using a geographical context. So I'm just going to link now into just a couple of case studies. So this first one's quite relevant for you Sydney-siders who've been around. One of the areas I do a fair amount of work is in emergency services, but I felt this might be help to convey a little bit about how we operate. So fire responders need to understand a large amount of situational information to make good decisions. Where the fires are, who is at risk, where the responders are and what the conditions are. Historically, reports are delivered in this kind of form, which is essentially a textual type form, which is great. It's very concise, but it's not very quick to understand what's really going on. Increasingly, responders are actually using this type of form, and this is using exactly the same information I was showing you before with a lot of other types of information, but laid in a geographical context. And incidentally, this is a live connection showing you, as it stands right now, where the hotspots are for the fire fronts, where the burnt areas are, evacuation centres. There's even social media feeds that we can get in when those sort of things are actually happening. So we can suddenly build up a real-time picture of what's going on, who's at risk. Inside departments, they also have things like where vulnerable populations are, for example, where the schools are, where aged person homes are. If you've got demographic information, you can suddenly also see a whole lot of other detail about the populations who might be living in and around these areas who would be affected. So this enables them to deploy their resources effectively, to make good decisions about what they have to use, and to save lives, essentially, and to reduce risk to, in this case, populations and property. The second example is a case study from Los Angeles, and it's called Turning Red Fields into Green Fields. So I'm just going to read this out. So Michael Messner, a Wall Street fund manager and co-founder of the Speedwell Foundation, proposed the Red Fields to Green Fields, a plan for turning distressed properties, which are red fields, into green fields, which is parks and open spaces. His argument was simple. It's to remove the glut of overbuilt and foreclosed properties and to redeploy that capital out of underperforming real estate and into green space. It would stabilise property values, strengthen banks and create jobs. As Messner put it, tearing down can create wealth. Land without buildings should be considered an asset by our financial system. He goes on to point out that the benefits are far more than financial. In essence, parks benefit the triple bottom line by improving economic, social and environmental health of communities. So history has shown that parks and open spaces tend to increase nearby property values, attract tourists and residents who contribute to local commerce, increase public health by providing opportunities for physical recreation and mental relaxation, and perform vital environmental services such as treating stormwater, reducing heat island effects and improving air quality. So Los Angeles was one of 11 cities to test this concept. So geodesign is used in this way, is about discovery. It's about reading the landscape to tease out what's most important. It involves assessing the condition of a place and its people, working across multiple scales to determine how one region, a neighbourhood or a number of specific sites might affect one another. Since it's holistic in nature, it requires gathering of diverse geographic data covering the natural, cultural and built environments. So this study collected data inventories of each level of investigation to meet the information demands of each scale. And GIS played a significant role by providing the data storage framework necessary to store, analyse and query and visualise all of this information. Now my last case study is, and I do have some others if there is time later, if any of you wanted to talk to me, but this last one is actually a video, and it's from a series by Penn State University called The Geospatial Revolution. And it really is talking about how pervasive GIS is becoming in our societies. This is a particular example of a health application of GIS in a community. And I'll just play the video and we'll then go into some comments and questions afterwards.
Six years ago, many neighborhoods had alarming rates of obesity-related conditions like heart disease and diabetes. 6 years ago, this city had fewer supermarkets per person than almost anywhere in America. If a mom wanted some fresh fruit for their kids' lunch in this community, she would have to navigate public transportation with big bags of groceries just to feed her kids.
That would not be a big deal if most of us had vehicles, but most of us don't. People had to shop at corner stores. Their food was horrible. They had to buy things that wasn't nutritional for the kids. So that's how we set on the path to get a supermarket in this community.
We're trying to figure out ways that supermarkets might be able to come back into neighborhoods. Here at the Food Trust, we develop GIS maps to describe problems in the community to stakeholders. We see where different factors overlap, where the supermarkets were and weren't, where the people were and weren't, and then you overlay in poverty or a lack of poverty and diet-related disease. And then voila, there's our space that we really need to target. And policymakers and community members could really get a look at where we should really focus our effort.
Having a very clear graphical presentation really helps you get these projects done. The Food Trust said, hey, there's a legitimate need here. And as soon as possible, we opened the first store.
This has opened up a whole world for us. Bringing up young people to teach them how to shop, how to deal with nutrition and to be healthier. And healthier children do better in school. And it's just a wonderful thing.
You all took a stand, a really important collaborative stand. If you can do it here, we can do it in underserved communities all across this country.
You could throw a lot of statistics at it, but there's something about seeing a map that speaks to people, especially policymakers, seeing highlighted in red your neighborhood as an area of high need. Projects are being funded, stores are being built because of this initiative. That should really raise the bar for other states wanting to know, well, what can we do?
I might just open up for questions and comments.
Just before you do, I'm just hoping that everyone can see the connection of not only how you identify problems and therefore influence people to engage in solving them, but how you could track that same data over time to see what impact was being created through those programs. This facility is here in Australia. Esri works all over Australia. The head offices happen to be in Brisbane, which is very handy for me, but they're all over the country, and they work with every level of government, and all the government data is sitting on an Esri platform, which compared to a Google platform, the owners don't give away the data, which you do if you put it on a Google platform. So it's a safe platform onto which we could lend data that we have in terms of community sector data to add to the government data and other data that's there to start doing this kind of analysis, which Esri is really open to doing. So it's a gold mine of how we could engage around these things.